Welcome to the You Triumph podcast, where we explore the triumphs and tribulations of extraordinary leaders from diverse backgrounds. I'm your host, Trevor Sterling, and across the podcast I hope to inspire success by highlighting that irrespective of social background or personal characteristics, with fair opportunity and the appropriate mindset, ultimately anyone can be successful. From incredible achievements to key life lessons learned, the goal is to shed insights into the mindset, motivations and stories behind the success, because you triumph if you believe. Hello, my name is Trevor Sterling and I'm delighted to return for another of the You Triumph Breakthrough Series podcasts. As you know, I have the privilege of speaking with people who have gone on to do great things. My mantra is that ordinary people can achieve the extraordinary if they have a positive mindset and are open to the experience. I also have a mantra which is don't just aspire to climb the ladder, aspire to be the ladder. It's important that when we achieve success, we try and give back to inspire others to come through. Well, today my guest is an exceptional person. I'm really delighted to have her join me on this podcast. Much of her background and experience really resonates with me because she is a black lawyer, a black woman lawyer, and I'm obviously a black male lawyer. And so our experiences have been quite similar, but different perspectives. So I'm really looking forward to diving into that. So can I welcome Pauline Campbell? How are you, Pauline?
Oh, I'm fine, Trevor. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, Pauline, as you know, the way we approach these podcasts is nothing's pre-prepared.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm as raw during this podcast as you will be as well.
Okay.
It's just a great conversation. I'm really pleased to be able to speak with you. So we're going to climb a metaphorical ladder, and we're going to start with the top of the ladder, what success looks like, and then we're going to go back to the bottom of the ladder, where it all started, and the middle rungs of the ladder are the obstacles that you had to overcome to achieve what you've achieved. So let's set the context then. What does success look like? What are those pinch yourself moments? Where are you at now in terms of success, Pauline?
Well, I'm currently a principal lawyer for the London Borough of Waltham Forest. I run a team that deals with all regulatory work and also debt collections, all kinds of aspects of regulatory work I work on with Waltham Forest at the moment. It's a really important job and very busy. I'm proud to be doing it, and it's significant at a time when local authorities are in such a difficult place. Also, I'm the chair for the Race Equality Network within Waltham Forest, which is a very significant post for me at the moment, dealing with all aspects of diversity and inclusion. All of that is done alongside the day job, but alongside that too, I'm also a pro bono lawyer for the Windrush victims. I'm a lawyer for the campaign called Justice for Windrush, which is led by Colin McFarlane, the actor and activist, and has a number of celebrities on board. And I also do pro bono work for others, people from our community, such as NatWest Bank, who closed the bank accounts for a number of older generations who have gone back to Jamaica and other parts of the Caribbean. So at the moment, I'm dealing with an ombudsman complaint in respect of a gentleman who was 91 years old, who had his account closed, and all the awful things that happened as a result. I've won I've been nominated and for quite a few awards. I won an award at Waltham Forest last year for celebrating their values, which was equality, diversity. I have been shortlisted for the Legal Personality of the Year for LexisNexis a year ago. I have been shortlisted for the Excellence Awards for the Law Society Lawyer of the Year. We won the Local Government Lawyer of the Year. We were shortlisted for the Solicitors Journal Awards. We were the only local authority to be a part of those 16 categories. And I've been shortlisted for the Women in Diversity this year and for the Precious Awards this year. I've won 3, got shortlisted for quite a few, and I'm really proud that this has happened. I'll give an example though. Being nominated for awards is not as simple as we think. Sometimes you see an award which you think, oh, we've had a great year, I want to do something with that. And you would think, well, somebody needs to nominate us for this. And what do you do? So you go to a manager and say, look, we've had a good year. It's a good time to do a nomination. And the first time it happened, the manager said to me, well, Pauline, not this year. Maybe you can try next year. So what I did was I looked at the rules. And I says, well, I don't need you. I can nominate myself. And that's what I did. And people pay hundreds of pounds for people to put together these awards. But we're lawyers. It's something we do. And I got shortlisted for every single one that I put myself forward for, and my team. So one of the things I say is never wait for somebody to put the door in front of you. You need to do it. If you think it's something you want to do, never allow yourself to be guided by other people.
Why? Because obviously industry recognition is important, and I've been blessed to have received a number of awards. But there's something personal behind why they feel important. Could you just share a bit of your sort of insight into why for you it would be important to be recognised in that way?
I think it's not just about prestige. It's about showing that you're leading the way within the industry you're working, and that it's important to you, the industry that you're working. What it does is it gives you and the people you work with recognition for the work that you've done. And that's why it's so important. And a CV needs to be as good as it can be. And a CV looks good when you've got lots of nominations on it. And that's something that you've got to think about. And I know that for some people, they think, oh, I can't be bothered. But we're living in a cutthroat world, particularly in law and any profession where it's very elitist. So you've got to think about, what can I do to make my CV a notch above the rest? What can I do to kick it out there? And with me being a Cockney girl from Hackney and all the rest of it, I wanted to show them that when I'm in the room, there may only be a few of us that look like me that are in the room, but I'm in the room because I deserve to be there. And the more people that see someone like me in the room who looks like me, they might want to do the same thing. So I meet the judges, I meet the finalists, and I talk to them and I network with them, and I'm able to share my experiences with them. And I actually met with a High Court judge who was one of the finalists in the Legal Professional Personality LexisNexis Awards, and I met with him and spoke to him for an hour in his offices about what we need to think about when it comes to white barristers representing young black males, giving them a voice when they know nothing about who they are. And it was a wonderful conversation to have with him and see if there was something we could do to address this imbalance.
So I'm picking out from that, really, because I suppose there's a couple of elements. One is people believe they can be what they can see. So this makes you more visible, and that will inspire others. But there's also that piece around combating the kind of stereotype. What you're really saying is, I deserve to be here. This is me.
Yeah. It's hard to blow your own trumpet. I'm being honest about that. And living in Britain, people tend to be a lot more conservative about that. But to me, I realised that there's nothing wrong in celebrating your talent. When we hide our talent, a number of us have had our talent hidden from us for so long, we don't believe in it. And when people keep telling you you're not worth something, you begin to believe it. But as soon as you dispel that myth, you reboot yourself, you realize that it is a myth. Anything I want, I can get it. If I believe in myself, you can do it. And for articles, for instance, I've had articles published in the Law Journal. And I did that because I didn't see many solicitors or people like me publishing things in the Law Journal. And I wanted to talk about things that mattered. So I sent lots of letters into the Law Gazette about the opinion page. And I thought, well, now that I've done that, I want to do something else. I want to see if I can do something in the Law Journal. And they've published 3 of my articles in the Law Journal, which I'm really pleased about because they're things that matter about the Windrush generation, about the backlog in the courts, and importantly, about the lack of social mobility within the legal world and why it's important that we do something about it and recognise it. So, yeah, and I'll just keep doing it because it's important.
And I mentioned at the start there about don't just aspire to climb the ladder, be the ladder. I mean, you're very much being the ladder, helping others through. You mentioned what you're doing around race equality at work, but also the Windrush Reach scheme. Just what was your motivation to get involved in those two particular things? The race equality at work, was there an issue?
For me, I think that I didn't want to come to the table the way we always come to the table after we've experienced some form of inequality. You've got to be able to present yourself in a way to say, I'm coming to the table because things need to change. I'm not asking you for change, I'm telling you we need change. And because I had that mindset, I said, you know what? I want to work in an environment where I can make change. And so for me, being a lawyer within the local authority, it does help because it gives you standing. But what I wanted to make sure I did was use my advocacy skills and my voice to give others a voice, so that by the time I finish, I don't need to be their voice, they be their own voice. And that is why I thought it was so important that I do this. We walk into a room with the slogan, show no fear, because so many of us look at ourselves and think, I don't want to say the wrong thing because of the way I'll be perceived. And I look at it this way, what the hell have we got to lose? If we are talented and confident in our abilities, we can do whatever we want, as long as we do it with dignity, from a place of understanding and not from a place of confrontation. We will be listened to. And that's why it's so important. And that's what I want people to get to that point. That's why I do it. The Windrush generation, they're our parents. They are people who have not had the same opportunities that we had, but because my parents did what they did for me, I was in a better place to be able to give them a voice. In the 60s, I was a child. I couldn't do it. But now I have that voice. I use it for those victims who need it. And for me, I am honoured and proud to be able to do it, because it means I'm giving something back for everything they've done for me. And it makes it all the worthwhile for me to do it.
There's something you can hear the passion in your voice, Pauline, and I'm looking forward to going to the bottom of the ladder, because that's what's driven you to be the lawyer you are. I always say the lawyer doesn't make you, you make the lawyer. And it's you that I feel as the lawyer, and it's fantastic to. Right, so before we go to the bottom of the ladder, any other things you want to say in terms of where you're at now, success?
Well, for me, right now, being a part of the Justice for Windrush campaign is an incredible, it's not an achievement, it's something that we naturally need to do for those victims. However, writing my books, and I'm on my second book now. The first was Rice and Peas and Fish and Chips, about us growing up. There you go, Trevor. About us growing up in Britain and how our lives were, and how politics played a massive role within our lives. And one thing I stress to young people is, you don't think politics are important, but they are crucial to understanding how things work and how they don't work. Because I describe our generation and our parents as being in the midst of this tsunami of inequality. And even though we didn't have any equality or any voice, we were still we were still pawns on a chessboard, where we were being moved around and being manipulated to win people votes, to lose people votes. And that's where we've got back to today. So I'm writing my second book now, and it's my 20 years in law. That's what it's about. The first book ends with me making it as a lawyer, getting there, and how hard it was to begin to reboot and believe in myself. The second part of the book is me getting there. What happened when I got there? How did I make it? Did I make it? What went wrong? What went right? And how I want to encourage people to believe that no matter how hard it is to get there, once you are there, it only gets harder. And then you've got to find it in yourself to stay.
Now, this is one of the things that really drew me to you. And I talked about parallels. So we're both born in the 60s, and we both entered the legal profession. but I've been a lawyer for 40 years this year. I've been in law for 40 years. You've been in
Wow.
law for 20 years. Right? And now we're going to go to the bottom of the ladder. One of the
Yes.
things I was going to add to that list, but you've just done it so neatly for me, was that you're also an author. And that's, I got your book and I read it and it really touched me. So Rice and Peas and Fish and Chips, everybody please get this book. It's a really important read. And why I enjoyed reading it, because what it did do was it took me sort of through my own journey in parallel with yours, although you're from North London.
I'm East London, Hackney
East London.
girl.
I'm a South London, the better
Oh
part of London,
no, no,
South
no,
London.
across the river. Oh
And
dear.
so we both we're both Windrush generation.
Hmm.
And this is the bit that's remarkable about your story. So in terms of back then we did O levels rather than GCSEs. Now I was talking to Sean Wallace, the chaser, is from one of my earlier podcasts, and he, I think at the age of 16, got 2 O levels. Now I think he got 1 actually. He got 1. I only got 2. So how many did you get, Pauline?
When I left school, I had none, no O levels. I just had CSC drama and art, but I didn't get any of my O levels. My O level grades were D's. I got 1 D and an E. So it was when I went to further education college that I pulled together a couple of O levels to get me into an office job.
Right, and so this is key because I had to stay on for another year and I managed to scrape another 2 O levels. I didn't go to university. You didn't go to university back then either.
No.
So how is it that, I became the first black senior partner in a top 100 firm in the UK? You've gone on to achieve all that you've achieved. Now, what is it that you would say happened to us and people like us so that we ended up be underachieving by the time we got to that point? And just touching on your book here, what it does do is it takes you on this journey where what was happening politically and in society in the 60s and in the 70s, and that really interplays with how people like us can actually be failed by the system. And so there's one striking line in the book, and it really hurt me when I read it, but it's an important line. And it was, the political movement at the time, there were slogans which were, if you want an end for your neighbour, vote Labour. That's the context of the society that we've been brought up in. So just tell us a bit about how you perceive society back then. If we start with the 60s, and of course, Enoch Powell
Yeah.
as well. So your overview.
I mean, the funny thing is, I was born in the same year, in the same month as Boris Johnson. But the difference between Boris Johnson and I was that I was born in this country and he wasn't. He was born in America. And I always make that comparison. I said, is his papers up to date? I always ask that and joke with people. But what I say is that our lives couldn't have been more different. My life and Boris Johnson's life could not have been more different. In that when we were born, we were supposed to represent hope to our mum and dads. We were here we were entitled to the same education as everyone else. We could go into school. There was no colour bar in the schools as far as education was concerned for us. And for my mum and dad, the education was so important. But I think our parents, maybe they were quite naive. I put it in the book that I believe that to think that we could just walk through the door because we talked the same, we had white friends, went to the sweet shop, did all the stuff they did, that we would be treated the same was a naivety. Not because they truly wanted things to change for us. They thought it would. Dad never believed it would. My dad was very practical. He always said to me when I was at primary school and in my first 2 years of secondary school, you're bright. You know they're not going to let you in. If you want to get in, you know it's going to be hard. They're not going to let you in. And I used to think Dad's crazy. My teachers love me and I'm doing really well. And growing up in an environment with a man called Enoch Powell, I talk about Enoch Powell, the man. I don't talk about Enoch Powell, the speech, because all people like Enoch Powell are strategists. They know when to do what they do and they know how to do it. Everybody that is like Enoch Powell he was extremely clever and he knew exactly what he was doing when he did it. So for me, when he made the Rivers of Blood speech, which everybody is still talking about today, he called all the newspapers, he called everybody to listen to this speech. Now, when it all blew up, he was saying, I don't know what's happened. I don't know what's going on. Oh, I just made a speech. But when you read the books on history, you will see that he said to one of his friends who was in the press the night before he made that speech, I'm going to make a speech and it's going to be like a rocket. But unlike any other rocket, this isn't going to come back down. So he knew what he wanted to do. And he became the most popular MP of that time because he was saying things that apparently the whole white population wanted to hear. And what he did on that day he made that speech was, we were no longer children. And I write it in the book, to the white population, you and I were no longer children. We were dangerous enemies who could never be integrated into this society. And that was such a strategic move. And so many people supported him that for decades, Enoch Powell became the go-to person on race. He became our voice, which is the most ironic thing you could even imagine. And so for me, I believe that once Enoch Powell made that speech, of course racism was there before. Of course we were dealing with colour bars. Of course there was inequality. But he put it on the map in a way, as one person said, he changed the face of politics overnight with that speech. And we paid the consequences of that. Us, Asians, but I'm going to be honest, mainly Black people paid the price for that. Because at the end of the day, we were seen as never being able to integrate. And he said this in his various reports that he did when he went all over to America, time and time again. He would say our colour was an indication of our difference. So irrespective of whether we were bright or not, our colour would be a part of that. And what we've got to remember is Enoch Powell made the speech, but who is society? The society of the children we grew up with, the society of the doctors, the teachers, the nurses, all those people who were in society, in housing, in education, who listened to that speech and believed it. And as a result of that, our opportunities changed. They were always neglected, but at that point, people were given permission to say it was okay. It was legal permission. It became legitimate to do what he did. And that is why people need to understand the significance of politics and how it has been detrimental to us, where teachers don't believe we're capable, where they don't believe we can make it. And we were slap in the middle of all of that.
So it's interesting, isn't it? Because your parents, like mine, came over from Jamaica, part of the Windrush generation, and they just had to go through life, often doing jobs which were less than what they would have done back home, but they kind of just sucked it up. I know from your father as well. I remember there was an example where when he was working, he just wanted to do a little bit extra and drive a lorry, and he was told, no, that's not your place.
That's right.
Get in your own lane. But they had the issue of teddy boys and the violent attacks, and many people may not know that in it's the violence that led to Notting Hill carnivals as we see them now. So through the 1960s, the teddy boy attacks and the overt racism, and then there was that switch, and by switch I mean it was almost a passing of the baton. So when Enoch Powell made his speech, suddenly you and I, our generation, were going to be faced with another version of the teddy boys, the skinheads, the National Front, but also the institutions weren't really going to support us. So just tell us a bit about, by institutions I'm referring to schools. You touched on teachers and their perception of you if you were Black in particular. Kids from the black community are more likely to be excluded, the PRUs, pupil referral units, etc. What was your experience then going through school against that backdrop of the Enoch Powell speech?
I think the experiences that I had was that I was actually at school at the time that they did the Rampton report. I was 15 at the time they did that. And that was a report where Shirley Williams, who was the education secretary, said, we need to look at why Caribbean children are failing in the school system. What's going on? So they did what we call the Rampton report, which was an inquiry into what was happening. And I was a part of that. And effectively, it outlined what the problem was, which I was experiencing directly, which was that teachers had low expectations of us as Black Caribbean children. They had low expectations. They either felt sorry for us and didn't think we had what it took, or if we did raise up or do anything that was different, we would be excluded because they would not know how to deal with us, or they chose not to. So in the midst of all of that, you had somebody trying to work out, what do we do? How do we try and sort this out with these Caribbean children? And I was in school at the time this was happening. And one of the things that I read was somebody called Bernard Cord, who wrote a book about young West Indian children and what teachers' expectations and were like, and how as a teacher he recognised the problem within the UK education system for us.
I think that was written about 71 or 72, wasn't it?
71.
Brilliant piece.
It wasn't it wonderful? It was so intuitive at the time. But when I read that, I was so upset because what it did for me was I wished that when I was at school, I had a Black teacher or somebody, because I was an A-list student right up until I was 13, 14. And then it all went wrong. I lost my way because I didn't know where I belonged. I didn't know who I was. I had people telling me to go back to where I came from. We're watching the National Front marching on the streets. You've got women on buses telling you to, in your school uniform, telling you to go back home, go back to where you came from, calling you a black bee, this, that, and the other. And amongst all that, you're dealing with talking with this accent, being a part of this country and not being welcomed. So, and when you go to the Caribbean, the same thing happens. They say you're an English girl. You know, you're not even their idea of what.
I mean, I have to say, when I first went back to Jamaica, I thought I was going to find this utopia. I was going to be, everybody's going to be there, welcome me with open arms, and you know, suddenly. But when I went there, as you say, I then suddenly felt British, the way I was perceived, you know, and so I felt like I didn't have a place.
Yeah, that's how we felt. We felt that as British Black kids, we didn't belong anywhere. And I thought that and we were very good at not telling our parents. Our parents were quite strict. You can't sit down and have a heart to heart with your mum and dad about, Mama, I need to talk to you about how I'm feeling at school and all this. Oh, what's wrong with you? Get on your clothes and go to school. What's wrong with you? You know, they ain't got no time for that. And so for us, we had to get through it. And that's what we did. And for me to get through it, my grades started to fall because I couldn't be all things to all people. So the only thing I could do was withdrawing myself, and my grades started to fall. And it was at 15 that a teacher told me I was no longer A-level material and that I would not get to university. And that's when my daddy told me, do not believe her. And that's when my life changed, and I believed my teacher over my dad, because I never saw anyone who looked like me, who aspired to what I wanted to be. I looked on TV, there was no one. I thought about all the things I wanted to do and I could never do it. So I just believed my teacher, and I just kind of just scraped together some O-levels, left school as soon as I could, scraped together some O-levels to get an office job. And that was it for me. I thought that would be my life.
And what was the first office job you had?
My first office job was working for they're now the DWP, the Department of Works and Pensions, but I worked for the Department of Health and Social Security, the DHSS. I was an admin assistant for the DHSS. I used to write out checks for people on benefits, and then I became an officer and I would work out their benefits and it used to be social supplementary benefits. I used to work that out. And so that was the job I did for a few years until I moved into housing benefits within the council.
Just digressing slightly here, because you mentioned before there's a coincidence that your brother has my name, so your brother's called Trevor. And I have a sister, Corrine, and she spent and has spent many, many years housing benefits.
Yes.
And local government and so forth. So you're on a similar path there, which
Yeah. And benefits is not easy. Calculating benefits, housing benefits isn't easy. And I became a complaints officer as well, dealing with ombudsmen. And you're talking about going back years. And benefits is a complicated area of law. It's all regulatory. And the more I did it, the better I got at it. I started to begin to see that I had skills that which gave me more of a structure in how I was looking at my life. But more importantly, within benefits, we used to have what you call reviews. So somebody would dispute your payment and you would have to go before the counsellors and argue your case for the council, and then you'd have the person on benefits arguing their case. And the council, we were a Labour council. It was Islington. You never win. But I won them all. And they used to say to me, why do you win them? And I would say, because I was good on my feet and I would prepare. And when I did that, I also then decided I was going to join the Black Workers Group, and I became a secretary for Islington Council's Black Workers Group. At the same time, Stephen Lawrence's parents were fighting for justice for their son. And I was really good at it. I would draft, people would ring me on a Sunday or a Saturday and say, "I'm trying to make my life a misery. Can you help me, Pauline? And can draft a letter and this and that." So I would always know that these people would be the only Black person in the room with all these white managers. So I thought, okay, let me help you. So I would draft their letters, or I would go in and I would speak on their behalf. You had people going to Jamaica for 4 weeks, and they're very naughty because when they're due to come back, they don't come back when they're supposed to come back. And then, the first thing that the managers want to do is get rid of them. So the punishment doesn't fit the crime. So you have to go in and explain. These people don't go back home for years. When they go back home, they want to spend time with their family, blah, blah, blah. So that gave me an instinct that I had something in me that I'd always had. I just forgot about it.
Something that was always there but hadn't been picked up through the school system, hadn't been nurtured, hadn't been encouraged. Your parents, like my parents, wouldn't really have been able to dive into the schooling system to make sure that the schools were doing what they should have done. But when you're in situ, you're now in a job, you actually realise that you are good, you are capable. I mean, I started when I was 16, 17 for a law firm, and I looked around and thought, hang on a minute, I can do this. So luckily I was working for a law firm, so I started nights and weekends and evenings just to qualify. But you were outside of the legal profession, and you carried on this track for over a decade.
16 years.
16 years. So now this is the bit that really, I want to say excited me, maybe that's what it did excite me, was the fact that now in your late 30s,
my mid 30s, I decided it's time. And
what did you do?
What I decided was I had to choose a degree that I wanted to do. I initially chose an English literature degree because I love writing, but then I thought, what am I doing that for? Where am I going? That's not really what I want to do. I want to be a lawyer. I've always wanted to be one. So I'm going to do a law degree. And I had to think on my feet because I had my mortgage now. I didn't have a family. I was just living by myself, but I had bills to pay. I couldn't afford to give up my job. So I had to think, okay, well, I'm going to have to do a full-time law degree and keep working, because I'm not doing a part-time evening degree, because I have 6 years for waste. I already waste much time, and now I'll waste another 6 years because that's how long it would take. So I decided, okay, I'm going to do 3 years. I had a wonderful boss in Hackney Council at the time. I was a benefits officer, but I was agency. So that means I could get paid for the hours I work. So what I did was I said, would you allow me to be your complaints officer for housing benefits. And also, whilst I'm doing that, I need to do a full-time law degree. So that means I have to drive between work and college. I mean, yeah, and I chose the closest university to where I worked, which was on the Holloway Road, North London University at the time. And so what I did was I took the test, because you have to take a test, and I passed that and I got in. So she said yes. Vicky died a few years ago. This woman was amazing, and she said yes. So what she allowed me to do was she allowed me to work a 25-hour week or more and go to university. So I would drive to college in the morning, go to work in the afternoon, and vice versa, depending on when the lectures were. And I did that for 3 years and spent the whole 3 years in the library on the weekend.
Wow.
And I got a 2-1. I was gutted I
Wow.
didn't get a first. I wanted a first, but you
But a
cannot.
2-1 is still
Yeah, but
exceptional.
it was important. I wanted a first, but I was on a mission. And my lecturer said to me at uni, he said to me, Pauline, you do realize doing too many notes is just as bad as doing too few. Because I had all these folders, I would make notes of everything. And all my fellow students were younger, and they'd all be going to the pub and wanting to teeth my notes and my folders. And I said, go away. I have not got time for this. So that was my 3 years, and I got through it. How I got through it, I don't know, but I just dug my heels in and did it, and I passed it in 3 years.
Wow. I mean, that is, and then you've got to try and get a job. So those that don't know, you've got to get a training contract, and then you've got to find a job. So
Yeah.
again, we know from all of the data and stats that if you're from our background in particular, that's particularly challenging. So how did you overcome that challenge?
Well, when I got my degree and then I did my legal practice course and I passed that, I said, you know what? I was terrified because now people had to take a punt on me. That's how it is. It's out of my hands now. Somebody has to take me on. And I looked everywhere. I cried my eyes out. I had to go back to benefits for 1 year because I couldn't get any work. And people would say to me, well, that was the most dangerous time for me. And this is what I would say to anybody who's looking to change their career later on in life. Please be mindful that if you go back to your old job, which is safe, remember that you're on a mission. This is not about going back to where you were. This is about staying on the road you want to be on. So what I did was I made the decision that I would keep looking while I was getting my money as a benefits officer. And I applied for absolutely everything. I actually got the yellow pages and I put it in the book that I wrote to every single solicitor, every one. I spent so much money on stamps and only 20 came back. But I kept all the 20 who said, we'll keep you on record just in case. And then one day I was reading The Guardian, and it was about a woman who was a mature student who had got a job as a legal advisor in the magistrates court. And she was a trainee solicitor in the magistrates court. And I thought, and they wanted people who could think on their feet, who had previous work experience. And so I thought, good. So I started to apply, and nothing happened for a long time. And then I saw a job in Kent, and I thought, okay, I've got to start thinking outside the box. London's just too much here. I need to find somewhere else. So Kent gave me an interview, and I got on the train and I went to Westmoreland. Never been outside London. I went into Westmoreland and I could see cows and sheep, and this me, oh, what the hell, where am I going? And went to a beautiful building, and there was 2 white males there, and they interviewed me. And I had to do a piece on antisocial behaviour. I had to talk about bail. I answered all the questions. But the biggest question they asked me at the end was, why should we give you this job? And I said, you know what, Pauline, you got nothing to lose. You need to tell them, because you ain't going to have nobody else like me here. I know that.
I think you used the word, didn't you say unique? I think.
I said, I am unique. But there was no, it wasn't as if there was a lack of modesty. I needed people to understand that I wasn't blowing my trumpet. I was being open and honest about my authentic self. This is me. I'm unique. How many girls from Acne are you going to get who's in their late 30s, who is coming to you to go through? And it will be a learning experience for all of us. And I got the job. And when I got the job, I was extremely naive, Because when we get our first job, don't we, Trevor, we think, wow, we've made it, we're there.
But it's just the start.
But we don't realise, hold on a minute, this is just the beginning of your journey. And this is when you really are going to need to have your wits about you to get through. Because the prejudice don't stop just because you got the job. The prejudice just starts because you get the job. So when I got the job in Kent, I write it in my second book, what happened to me when I left, leaving London and working in Kent. I drove back and forth from Tottenham to Kent every day. Maidstone, Sittingbourne and Sevenoaks. I had to drive every day between the Blackwall Tunnel and get there. And I just did it because I had to, but it was torturous because I didn't get any real respect. I had to fight for every bit of respect I got. I was treated as if I was quite thick. I had to go back to the beginning. I'm a big woman now, but I've got little kids telling me that they don't think I'm worth anything, and I had to hold my mouth and just take it. And I had to deal with quite a lot of prejudice. And I did hand in my notice after about 7 months. And it was a white manager that came to me and sat me down and persuaded me to stay. He says, you can't walk away from this. You need to stay.
But eventually you left, but on your terms, because you realised you wanted to keep climbing the ladder.
Yeah, I wanted to climb the ladder. But the thing is, as soon as I put my notice in, I knew that it wasn't the right thing to do. And I knew that I was going to find a job somewhere else and get back on that road. But it was easy for me because I stayed where I was and kept on that road, made it easier for me. But when I left Kent, the day I qualified was the day I left. I timed it to the second. But they gave me a massive farewell. Everybody was saying, move to Kent, Pauline, we love you. They got to know me. I was accepted then because they knew me. But I knew that I know what I want. I want to be in London. I want to be near my family. And I want to be in a place that is diverse and makes me feel like I'm a part of society. In Kent, I would have been an outsider, and I need to feel a part of the society I'm in. So for me, I came home. That's how I describe it. I came home and came back to London. But I left without a job when I left Kent. I didn't have a job when I left, but I was a qualified solicitor. So for 7 or 8 months, I did corporate complaints for Southwark Council and dealt with their ombudsmen until I got a job. And Trevor, the job I got, you couldn't make it up.
You went full circle, didn't you?
I went full circle. And the job I got was a prosecution's lawyer for housing benefits.
That is incredible.
Couldn't make it up. And it was at Hounslow Council. And that job was meant to be. And it was wonderful because I was still dealing with benefits. But what made it even better was the benefits officers couldn't believe it because they had a lawyer who spoke like them, who'd been them, who understood them, and was dealing with their cases.
And you had all of this life experience, lived experience. And what the thing about you as you tell your story is that throughout you have been you. You've remained your authentic self throughout. So with that lived experience and you making the lawyer not making you, you are obviously going to be hugely impactful.
But in Kent, though, when I first started, I wasn't my authentic self because I didn't know what to do. I was in an environment where I was just one of 2 black legal officers. I didn't know what to say. I was worried about my Cockney accent. For about 2 weeks, I was, hello, how are you? Oh, yes, no, her. I was really trying to be somebody I wasn't. But it was such hard work. I couldn't focus. So I said, Pauline, you just got to be you. Because you're wasting time trying to be somebody else. And that's what a lot of us do. We give up who we are in order to fit in. But we forget by doing that, we won't do the job as well as we could. As soon as I let that go, I began to excel.
I've often said that I spent the first half of my career conscious of my difference and then the second half celebrating it.
Oh, I love that. That is so true. Because as soon as you get to grips with, oh my God, I'm actually quite amazing. My parents, my background, everything that I've achieved, I need to celebrate it. I shouldn't hide it. I need to shout it from the rooftops about how significant it is to be a Caribbean child living in an environment and and blossoming in it. That's why, yeah, you're so right on that.
So just so I've got this right in my head, loving parents, and actually you open your book with the sad loss of your father, so you really get a sense of how close you and your family are. And I think you've got 3 siblings, is that right?
I've got 2 older sisters and 2 younger brothers, and I'm slap in the middle of the lot of them.
Right.
So I'm a middle child, and I don't care. There is middle child syndrome. You get it. You get it from all sides. So yeah, it was there was 5 children growing up in an environment. My sister from Jamaica, Angela, she didn't come to this country until she was 19. So it was the 4 of us that grew up. My 2 brothers and my sister and me grew up, and we lived here. So yeah, we had a strong unit, and Daddy didn't joke. He had a sound system that you couldn't touch. He loved his cricket, and Daddy was a rough, hard Jamaican man. You couldn't mess with him.
Did he have a radiogram, as a matter of interest?
Yeah, he did, and he loved it, and and my brother took over the sound system, and Mummy was a machinist for years, but because she had asthma, she decided that she had enough of that. And when I was 16, Mum asked me to fill out an application for her to become a domestic in Royal Free Hospital. And when Mum said to me, I said, what should I put down for education, Mum? She said, just put general education, but I'm willing to work hard.
Wow, that says it all, doesn't it?
She got the job, and she moved up from there, passed her driving test at 50, got a job in a care home where she became an assistant officer. My mum changed her life just like I did.
So when we're talking about social mobility, and you think about that being our backgrounds, and our parents not having the skills because they weren't born here to navigate us through either the schooling system or through society. So you end up leaving school, as I did, with little in the way of qualification. You then land in a job, but what comes through with you is your determination, your resilience, your desire to get to where you ought to be, where you deserve to be. And I suspect part of that was to also make your parents proud. That's why they came here, because of that sacrifice.
I felt I let them down. I did.
And then you, later on in your mid to late 30s, you qualify. I think you qualified as a solicitor in about 41, 42. 41. Then you leave London to go outside of your comfort zone, and then you come back to London, and then you get your dream job in some ways because you're a prosecutor dealing with housing benefits. Then you've gone on to build or be part of award-winning teams and be listed for various awards and receive various awards, and gone on to become an author. Rice and peas and fish and chips. I mean,
I love the way you do that.
It's an incredible story, and I just want to touch on something which is topical. It's difficult, but it's topical. I've just outlined your story, your brilliance as a black woman. What did Frank Hester's comments mean to you? Because when you talk about Diane Abbott, who went to similar background to us, went to Cambridge, became the first black female MP, etc., etc. I mean, what did his comments mean to you? Because in a way, you were targeted in some ways. What did that mean to you?
I think for me, what it did was it took me back to every time somebody, and let's use the word diss you, it's what happens to you. You think that it doesn't hurt when somebody overlooks you. Every time I walk into a room and somebody says, oh, so you're Miss Campbell, it takes you back there. And what his comments did was it only emphasized what we deal with every day. It is nothing new. His comments are nothing new. It's nothing that we don't experience every day of our lives. And so for me, what it did was I did a piece on LinkedIn about Diane Abbott and Margaret Thatcher. What I wanted to do was I wanted to put it in perspective, and it got quite a few hits, because I looked at Margaret Thatcher's reign and I looked at Diane Abbott's, and I put the two together. And I said, what would happen if one day Margaret Thatcher woke up and she was a black woman? What would happen? And that's how I describe it. What we deal with is nothing new. It's part and package of who we are. The situation is, though, that this is about power. When a black woman walks into a room and she holds her own, she is perceived very differently to anybody else. Whatever the reasons for that are is very clear. It's worrying when a black woman walks into the room and holds her own. And so for us, we do it to each other too, as women of colour. We're not always as supportive to each other as we could be when we get higher up the ladder. And I look at certain politicians when I say that, who are in politics now and who should be a voice that pushes for equality but does not. And so for me, when I look at what we do within our lives as women, full stop, what Hester's comments have done is only reiterate the ongoing problem that we deal with every day. But what do we do about that? What do? We don't just walk away from it. We stand up to it. It's wonderful to see how women are coming together and standing up to it. Because one of the things about Diane Abbott and any woman that I would say, I don't agree with Thatcherism. I don't agree. I've never been a conservative, but I recognize Margaret Thatcher's achievements as a woman. That's what I do, irrespective of whether I agree with her politics or not. As a woman, she was a trailblazer in politics. Diane Abbott, as a woman, she is a trailblazer in politics. That is the point we've got to get to. We've got to get to the point where when you see me, you don't see Black Pauline Campbell, the lawyer, you see the lawyer.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's the point we've got to get to. And at the moment, what was said about Meghan was awful. But it's men of power that say these things are not able to say it. So for me, it's nothing new, but we are dealing with it. And thank God we have our voice and we choose to use it. And that's what we're doing. More so than ever before. I don't get bogged down by Hester. I don't get bogged down by what he said. What I do is look at how we react to it and how we respond and how we say, that's not happening. You may think you've got a voice, but your voice will never overpower mine ever again. How dare you? Well, and that's how I deal with it. How dare you? Not on my watch. And that's what we want our young girls to see. Not on my watch. And do you remember that little girl who didn't get her award? Remember there was a picture of there was all these girls and everybody got their little medal and the little girl didn't get it. But what I did was I didn't take away that little black girl didn't get her medal. What I took away was she was expecting it. She stood there. She wasn't walking away thinking, oh, I don't deserve it. She was going, where is it? Where is it? Where's my medal? And that is what I describe when I talk about power in women. That little girl knows she's entitled to it. So that's what makes her so powerful to me. She was waiting for it to be given to her. And when she didn't get it, she was thinking, where is it? So that's how I look at Diane Abbott. I look at me. I look at every black woman that is positive in my life and every white woman that is positive in my life. We stand together against the Hesters of this world. Hell no, not on my watch. And we've got to be brave enough to stand up for it. Sorry, I get so passionate about it.
I asked the question because I would have answered it as passionately. But, for me, it's important to give you the opportunity.
Thank you.
And I absolutely respect you, Pauline. The way you've, I say don't just aspire to climb the ladder, aspire to be the ladder. You've climbed the ladder. You've been the ladder. But you know what else you've done? You've built other ladders. Mm. And you're a true and absolute inspiration. And when I say that the ordinary can achieve the extraordinary, if they have a positive mindset and are open to the experience. You've shown that. You've channeled all of those difficulties into a fuel that has driven you forwards, not just for you, but for everyone. And as I finish this podcast, Paul, if I may just say, it is because of the likes of you, and indeed me, and indeed many others like us. That's what our parents, the Windrush generation, hoped for. And I'm really proud to be speaking to somebody that has enabled us to make that generation so proud. So thank you so much, Pauline, for being part of this podcast. And I guess I should finish just by saying, I know Pauline would want me to say this, but please do go out and buy rice and peas and fish and chips. Thank you so much for being part of this You Triumph podcast, Pauline Campbell.
Thank you, Trevor, for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
Thank you for joining us for the You Triumph podcast. I've been your host, Trevor Sterling, and this has been a journey of triumphs and the mindset that makes them possible. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, like, and leave a review. Your support helps others discover the show and the valuable insights shared. Join us next time as we continue to unravel the stories and strategies for succeeding in life. Remember, you triumph if you believe. And if you've achieved, one must not aspire simply to climb the ladder, but to be the ladder.